Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Scripture Joe over here, and welcome back to another episode of this tutorial series making you a new Roblox scripture fledgling. Last episode we talked more about local scripts and their valid locations, and the server script service and server storage services. In this episode we are going to talk about another three services, the StarterGui, StarterPack, and StarterPlayer services. Now these three services, as their names imply, are places to store things you want any new starting player to have added to their character, inventory, or screen. Each service stores specific items that would be added to a new player's player GUI, character, player scripts, or backpack folders or models. For example, if we start or we play the game right now and our player is added, we can see how there is a backpack folder in which we can store tools, as well as a player GUI folder in which we can store GUI, as well as a player scripts folder in which we can store local scripts that you want to be stored inside of your as a child of your player, right? And those scripts are placed in valid locations where the scripts can run. As you can see, those scripts you can see right now are scripts provided by the Roblox IDE automatically whenever a player joins the game. These are essential for making the player character sounds, as well as scripts that are essential for different things, such as, for example, the GUI that you can see up top. This GUI is already added to the player GUI. I believe so. No, it's not over here. Regardless, it's stored inside of the IDE. It's automatically added, as well as you can see over here a script called animate is added to the character as soon as they join, and this is provided from Roblox. You don't have to add it yourself, as well as the health script. This restores the health of the player as they are playing the game. Now let's stop the game and talk more about the StarterGui service. Now, some instance classes we still did not talk about are GUI instances or GUI instances. These include the screen GUI, so screen GUI, billboard GUI, and the last one, surface GUI instances or class instances or classes. These GUI instances can store text buttons, frames, image buttons, and much more. A lot of other instances that can become visible on the player's screen. We will talk more about them in a later video. But for now, let's understand what they are. GUI instances are basically 2D interactive drawings that you can add in your game to create a main menu or other interactive visual elements. You can add GUI instances to StarterGui service to have them added to new players' screens as soon as they join. For example, I created a simple GUI, and let's enable it. As you can see, whenever I play the game, this GUI will be added to my player GUI folder, in which it will be visible. If it was enabled, it would be visible. But if we disable it by toggling the enabled property, it won't be visible. We'll talk more about the properties of GUI instances in a later video. One useful property of the StarterGui service is the show development GUI. So if this was enabled, alright, and you want it to be enabled, but while you're developing, you don't want to see it. So for example, you want to access a certain model at certain times. For example, you stopped editing the GUI, but now you want to hide it in order to be able to see a model in your game, for example, and edit that model. This property disables or hides all the GUI inside the StarterGui service. For example, we have this GUI. Once we click this or toggle off that property, it will become invisible or not visible or hidden. And this property is called show development GUI or GUI. And it's of the Boolean data type, so you can toggle it on or off, or true and false or false. And you can also toggle it using the view tab, using the UI visibility button. For example, right now the UI visibility is toggled off. If we toggle or click on it and toggle it on, we can see how the UI is visible again. Now let's disable this GUI and talk more about another service, which is the StarterPack service. This service stores any tools you want the player to be able to access as soon as they join the game. These tools inside the StarterPack service are added or replicated inside of the player's backpack as soon as they join the game. For example, I already created a tool or added a tool from the toolbox, and it's called Torch. And if you start the game and play the game, you can see how you can access this tool using the hotkeys, and it's placed inside the player's backpack. For example, over here, if we click on players, the player that just joined, which is my player, and then we click on the backpack or open the backpack folder, we can see how that tool is added to the backpack, and it's called Torch. Whenever we press the hotkey, it's moved to the character. So we press 1, this is the hotkey associated with this tool, it's automatically associated, we don't have to script it. This is an easy method of just adding tools directly to your game without having to script any UI or anything specific to that tool, right? You might have to script some things such as when this tool is equipped, what you want it to do, when it's unequipped, what you want to happen. And this is something we will talk more about when we reach the tools instances. And these instances have other utilities we will talk about in a later video. So if we press 1, we will see how this tool is equipped. If we press 1 again, it's unequipped and return to the backpack. Now let's stop the game and talk about the last service we want to talk about in this video. And this service is the StarterPlayer Service. This service has 2 folders in which you can store local scripts or even server scripts that are added to the player's character or player whenever they join the game. And those are added to the folders, to the player scripts folder I showed you whenever the player joins the game, as well as the character. So anything stored in the starter character script is added to the character. Whatever is stored in the starter player scripts is added to the player scripts folder inside of the player. And those are valid locations to run local scripts as well, not only service scripts. Now, the StarterPlayer Service has a bunch of properties that can be used to constrain certain things related to the player, to any player that joins the game. For example, we have the health display distance and name display distance properties. Those properties set how far away you want the health bar or name associated with a certain player to be visible to other players. And this unit is those two properties are number values, and they basically tell you how far away the health bar or the name of a player is visible to another character in units of studs. So the unit you use in Roblox Studio or in Roblox is studs for distance. It's not meters, it's not kilometers, it's studs. And studs is basically, if we come to the base plate using the camera, we can see how this one square is called a stud. This is the distance of a stud. Now, another properties or some other properties you would like to know about, or one would like to know about, are the camera's max zoom distance and camera min zoom distance properties. And those basically constrain how far away or how close you can zoom in or zoom out the camera. Camera min zoom distance is how close you can zoom in the camera in terms of studs. So over here it's set to 0.5 studs, and this is how camera max zoom distance is how far away you can zoom out the camera, and it's set to automatically or by default set to 128 studs. Some other properties one would like to know about are the character max slope angle, character walk speed, and character jump height properties. And these are properties related to the character of the player. So if you are playing the game and you're walking around, the maximum slope you can basically climb over or walk over is the character max slope angle. So if the slope is 89 degrees as set by the property, and this is a number value, if it's 89 degrees or less, you can walk over that slope. If it's more than 89 degrees, basically 90 degrees, or it's going over you, at an incline over you, you can't walk over it, which is logical. The other property is the character walk speed, and this is explained by its name. It's how fast your character is walking, so 16 studs per second, probably. I believe it's per second. And the last property is the character jump height, and this is how high the character can jump in terms of height. So they can jump by what is set by the property 7.2 studs high. Now there are another two properties that are useful if you want to stop the character's appearance from loading, or if you want to stop the character from auto-loading, or if you want to stop the game from loading the character from the beginning. So for example, when a player joins the game, you don't want the character to load at all. And those properties are found in the player service and the StarterPlayer Service respectively. The player service contains the character auto-loads property, which tells, if set to true, it tells the computer or the game to load the character of the player as soon as they join the game, or if it's set to false, this tells the game to not load the character at all. The other property which is found in the StarterPlayer Service is the load character appearance property, and this tells the game whether to load the character appearance of the player. For example, if the player's character avatar in Roblox is a certain way, do you want that avatar to carry or to replicate their appearance to the player character when they join the game or not? This property essentially does that. So if it's set to true or it's set to on, it replicates that appearance. If you don't want that appearance to be carried on to the game, you can set it to false. Those are basically the most used properties in the StarterPlayer Service, and we talked about this property, which is the character autoloads property, and let's set it to true for now, because we want to talk about another useful thing for the StarterPlayer Service is that you can add a default character that any player joins the game will be set to. For example, if we add let's open the toolbox, search for a minion. Alright, and we want essentially any player that joins the game to have their character set to this minion. Alright, and this minion has to be inside of a model. So let's add a model using the plus button. So click on the plus button, type in model, click on model, and then parent the minion part to that model, and the model has to have a humanoid. Anything you want to set to the starter character has to have a humanoid. So we added a humanoid using the plus button. So we clicked on the plus button and then typed in humanoid and added the humanoid. And now we have to rename this model to starter character. And now if we add this to the StarterPlayer Service, and let's remove load character appearance. Let's remove the load character appearance property. Let's make sure that the part is not set to anchored, otherwise you won't be able to move. It's set to false, yeah. The anchored property is set to false, and the model name is set to starter character. So now if we start the game, any player that joins the game will have their character set to this model, which is the starter character model added to the StarterPlayer Service. So let's play and see how the character is set to this model. And although it's messed up a little bit, this is because I don't know why this is. Let's try to 1 sec. Player play. Alright, so I fixed it, and the fix was just adding a humanoid root part. And this might be a little bit confusing as to how to do this, because you would need to know more about the Motor 6D instance, as well as some properties related to the player character, which are anchored, can collide, and can touch, as well as can query, which we're not going to delve into that right now. We'll talk more about it in a later episode. But what we want to know is that we can add a character to the StarterPlayer Service. Let's stop the game. We can add a model to the StarterPlayer Service and set it as the starter character of any player that joins the game. And this model would not be animated like any regular character, because it's not in the format of of what Roblox is used to. So it's used to rigs, 15 part rigs and 6 part rigs, and the anime script animates that. But this model is not a 15 part rig, nor is it a 6 part rig. So what we can do is use a tool found in the Roblox IDE. If we go to the Avatar tab and look at this button called Rig Builder, we can create any rig. For example, let's call it, let's create a avatar, which is the block avatar, and let's make it R15, masculine or feminine, whichever you wish. So block avatar, and then we can use this rig and rename it as StarterCharacter, and then add it to the StarterPlayer Service. Let's delete the minion or just move it to the replicated storage. And this is what this thing over here will be, what our starting character will look like. So whenever we load the game or play the game, this is how they will look like. If you want to edit it or change it, you can change the color properties of the mesh parts found inside of the model. Mesh parts are similar to parts. They have almost the same properties. They have some different properties, such as the mesh ID property and the texture ID property, which allow it to be imported from other programs like Blender or Substance Painter and the such. So over here we can change the colors of the head. Let's change it to a green, for example, and let's change everything else to a red. And this is how the character will look like when you join the game. So let's place it inside of the StarterPlayer Service. Make sure that it's named to StarterCharacter. And if we play the game, we will see how our character looks like that. And although the colors aren't what we set it to, that's because the colors are overwritten by the body colors. Is it found over? Yes. It's because the body colors instance inside of the character. Let's delete this. Let's stop the game, delete this, and then play again. And it won't overwrite the colors of the character when we start. So if we start the game, the colors will stay the same. As you can see, this is our starting character. And that's it. So in the next episode, we will talk about another 3 services, the teams, starter, where is it? It's not found over here. Let's stop the game. Yeah, so in the next episode, we will talk about the Teams, Sound Service, and Text Chat services. I hope you enjoyed this learning experience, and if you want to continue, be sure to watch the next video. If you want to stop here, just save your progress by pressing File, Save to File, and then name the file whatever you want and save it wherever you wish. Be sure to support the channel by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions or inquiries, feel free to ask in the comments section.